Do you know the best way to tell if someone's afraid of you? Do you know the number one best way to know if someone is afraid of you? They tell you they're not afraid of you. That sentiment might not be directly implicated by today's poem, but the thought process behind it most certainly is. Welcome to Strip Cover Lit, where we squeeze the bigger picture out of literature. I'm Adrian Fort, and we are here for another poetry discussion, which will appear in two separate playlists here on the channel. Number one being the poetry discussion playlist. Number two being the Robert Frost playlist, a playlist of poetry discussion and other content, which is Robert Frostian in nature. The poem today is a short poem. Unlike Emily Dickinson, I think Emily Dickinson is at her best when she's writing short poems. I think Robert Frost is at his best with narrative poems. Today's poem, A Time to Talk, however, is a short poem by Robert Frost, but there is something at the core of this poem worth talking about. It reads as such. When a friend calls to me from the road and slows his horse to a meaning walk, I don't stand still and look around on all the hills I haven't hoed and shout from where I am, what is it? No, not as there is a time to talk. I thrust my hoe in the mellow ground, blade end up and 5 feet tall, and plod. I go up to the stone wall for a friendly visit. There is something very, very mundane about this poem, which, if we put on our literary critic hat, means there might be something very, very not mundane to talk about. Let's read the poem one more time and just stick with me here. See if there's something that becomes obvious in its sort of glossing over here. When a friend calls to me from the road and slows his horse to a meaning walk, I don't stand still and look around on all the hills I haven't hoed and shout from where I am, what is it? No, not as there is time to talk. I thrust my hoe in the mellow ground, blade end up and 5 feet tall, and plod. I go up to the stone wall for a friendly visit. Who is our speaker telling? This is a case of methinks the lady doth protest too much. Is our speaker speaking to someone else, or is this a simple reminder to himself? Look, if people come to talk to you, you have to go talk to them. When people come to talk to you, it is rude not to talk to them. If your neighbor comes up to you, it might be sort of a menial discussion about this or that, how's the weather, etc. But if you just stand there and shout at the guy, well, maybe he won't have that cup of sugar when you need it. It seems to me that what this poem is not some profound conflagration of wisdom. No. It strikes me that what this poem probably is a bit of an incantation. This is our speaker telling himself, I will not simply yell at the neighbors. I will not simply yell at the neighbors. I will not simply yell at the neighbors. It strikes me that perhaps our speaker here may be a bit of a prick. Now, here's another question. Our speaker is observing the fact that sometimes your neighbors come up and talk to you. Nowhere in these words, nowhere in this poem is the possibility that I will go up to the neighbor and talk to him. Everyone is coming to our speaker. So I think maybe there is something to be taken from this part of the poem as well. Where is all the detail in this poem? We're going to get to why our speaker is never approaching his neighbors, it's simply our neighbors approaching him in a second. For that, we have to go through some reasoning in these lines. Where is all the detail in this poem? All the detail is in the work. All the details in the work. I don't stand and look around on all the hills I haven't hoed. All the hills I haven't hoed, that is work pending. That's the stuff I haven't done yet. That's going to live back here until it's gone, until it's done. Then, we have this friend. When a friend. How blank a statement. When a friend. Not when John. Not when my dutiful neighbor. When a friend calls to me from the road and slows his horse to a meaning walk. Those are very simple statements. Those are very empty. You don't get a picture from that, really, right? All the hills I haven't hoed, you get a picture there. You have an image of that. You know what he's talking about, even if you've never hoed in your life. I, for one, am quite the hoe. And shout from where I am, what is it? No, not as there is time to talk. And then we get more details, not as there is time to talk. I thrust my hoe in the mellow ground. We have description of the ground itself. We are familiar with the ground. Blade end up and 5 feet tall. We have a very nice description of the hoe itself. 5 feet tall hoes, that's about perfect. And plod. I go up to the stone wall for a friendly visit. How empty, how vapid a statement is that? I go up to the stone wall for a friendly visit. Versus, I thrust my hoe in the mellow ground, blade end up, and 5 feet tall. We know exactly what's going on there. We have detail in that sentence. So it seems that our speaker here is really work-oriented, is really someone who is familiar with the work itself. So it seems he has to remind himself to be friendly when friendly is required. This incantation of a poem is a reminder to our speaker himself, look, you got to go talk to people, man. You can't just be the jerk in the fields all the livelong day. And so, this is the part that strikes me. He's very work-oriented. Does this tell us that our speaker doesn't have anyone else? Our speaker here doesn't have a woman. Our speaker here doesn't have any children. Our speaker here does not have anyone else to whom some of the labor may be thrust. Our speaker here owns all the work. Our speaker here is only work, so much only work that he has to put together a verse to tell himself you can't only be about work. Our speaker here offers no description of his friend calling from the road. Our speaker here offers no description of what a friendly visit might look like, and he has the tenacity to name the poem itself A Time to Talk. How naked a statement is that? So, it seems to me that this poem is a reminder to the self to be friendly because It is not in our speaker's nature. Our speaker's nature is isolation and solitude. That is all the time I have for this poetry discussion. If you like or appreciate what it is that I do here, hitting the like button really does help me out, as it tells YouTube to share this video with other literature lovers. If you find yourself here by chance but not design, I release multiple videos every single week about literature. I am currently going short story by short story through the Fincavigia edition by Ernest Hemingway. We recently finished up Dubliners by James Joyce. We are reading through The Great Gatsby by F. Scott Fitzgerald and Carrie by Stephen King right now. There's poetry every Monday, and I hope to have you back for the next one.